Thank you for stopping by at the Movie Marquee. Our podcast reviews well-known movies and contains spoilers. The podcast may contain mature subject matter and mature language. Listener discretion is advised. Enjoy the show.
Quiet on set. Places, everybody. And action.
Welcome to the Movie Marquee. Today on the Marquee, we'll be focusing on Richard Donner's 1985 movie, The Goonies. With me is Eric.
I was just trying to dictate myself.
And Ted.
I'm going to hit you so hard that when you wake up, your clothes are going to be out of style.
And I'm Ken, and this is ridiculous. It's crazy. I feel like I'm babysitting, except I'm not getting paid.
Well, that's probably true.
Well, we aren't getting paid. We mentioned that before.
You're not getting paid for babysitting us.
Your parents couldn't afford me. So, Eric, do you have the particulars of The Goonies?
Yes, I do, Ken. The Goonies was released on June 7th, 1985. Had a budget of about $19 million, and it grossed worldwide $124 million. $64 million U.S. and about $60 overseas, so I think we can all agree it made a little money. The screenplay was written by Christopher Columbus, not the Explorer, of course, directed by Richard Donner, and the story was by Steven Spielberg. The movie itself has a cast of who's who in 1985 standards. We have Josh Brolin as Brand, Sean Astin as Mikey, Corey Feldman as Mouth, Jeff Cohen as Chunk, Kerry Green as Andy, Ki Hoi Kwan as Data, Martha Plimpkin as Steph, Robert Davi as Jake, Joe Pantoliano, Chicago's very own, as Francis, the late great former NFL star John Matusek as Sloth, and rounding out the cast is Anne Ramsey as Mama Fratelli.
So, Eric, what do the critics have to say about this wonderful film?
Well, Ken, the critics actually like this movie a lot more than they dislike the movie. Rotten Tomatoes, it is fresh at 76% with an audience score of about 91%. The reviews are mostly positive. Coming off of the Blu-ray cover itself, the lead review from the New York Daily News says it's a deliciously dizzy adventure with crowd-pleasing fun. The New York Times, Janet Maslin, said it has crooks, bats, cobwebs, skeletons, a lovable monster, an underground grotto, and a treasure hidden by some of the most considerate, clue-loving pirates who ever lived. Their ghostly ship is the movie's piece de resistance. Empire said it's a rollicking good time it had by all in this adventure that is built on archipelago plot strands that tie together. The Guardian said The Goonies has a rich and indomitable air of American innocence. Have you guys ever realized that movie reviewers always like to use big words to make themselves sound more important?
A lot of 5-cent words.
What is up with that? Seriously. Jay Scott with the Globe and Mail said this movie remains an embodiment of Spielberg's commercially cunning brand of clanically retro filmmaking, despite the wit and charm brought to their speak dialogue by the talented young performers. The Goonies is less a movie than an entertainment machine. Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune says, as entertaining as The Goonies finally becomes, and its last hour is mostly one pleasure after another, it's a shame that Spielberg, writer Chris Columbus, and director Richard Donner feel the need to take the low road in terms of language. How about that? And some of the lower reviews on this one also related to language. Peter Stack of the San Francisco Chronicle said, I would not take very young children to see The Goonies. Too intense. I would also discourage any adults who are borderline in their liking of children from seeing this film. The Goonies could easily turn a lot of otherwise tolerant grown-ups against children, and I'm assuming that would be a terrible thing. And Dave Kerr, the reader, said, the usual Spielberg rhetoric about the sanctity of childhood and the beauty of dreams seems wholly fictitious in this crass context, which even includes a commercial in the form of a rock video for the tie-in merchandise. That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that some of these critics are the pearl-clutching type.
Let me finish one review here, if I may. On Roger Ebert, he's a little bit more on the positive side, and he makes a pretty good review here. He says, The Goonies, like Gremlins, shows that Spielberg and his directors are absolute masters of how to excite and involve an audience. E.T. was more like Close Encounters. It didn't simply want us to feel, but also to wonder and to dream.
It's amazing that there's a lot of pearl clutching about the language. The language isn't nearly that bad, but I guess we're in an era since South Park came out in the 90s.
Apparently,
It's like,
in 1985, kids didn't swear. So.
Exactly. It's like these adults don't think that fourth grade kids are going to curse. It's a little ridiculous.
Before we get into the plot,
Ridiculous.
The question is this movie a kids movie? Is it a family film? Is it an adventure film? I think it all depends on how you classify it. If these reviewers were classifying this as a kids movie, I guess I could see why they were a little frustrated by that.
Well, define the word kids. Are we talking like 4, 5, 6 years old?
Mhm.
Are we talking 10, 11, 12? Are we talking like late junior high, early high school? Because I think this movie really appeals to the older group of kids. I don't think a 4 or 5-year-old is really going to get into it. I'm sure the character Sloth is probably going to scare the hell out of them. But someone who's early junior high,
It's a
late
teenager
junior
movie.
high,
It's made for teenagers.
I don't know if it's made for teenagers. I think teenagers might say this is a little babyish. I think it's more of junior high.
I don't know. It's just the language was one of the last things I thought about in the movie. I mean, if somebody hadn't even pointed it out, I don't even remember any of the kids cursing in the movie. And here these critics are just clutching their pearls. Oh my God, a kid is going to say shit. Come on now. It's like, were you never a kid? Do you not remember what it was like to be a kid? It seems a little disingenuous. It's being pretentious for being pretentious' sake.
Well, I think the words that the movie reviewers use are pretty pretentious on their own. So it definitely.
And
definitely
I never
makes
knew Gene Siskel to be that uptight
Yeah.
about.
Again, I think it depends on what he thought this was aimed at. And we also are looking at this review from 35 years ago. If the reviewer is looking at it as this is a kid's family movie, you're taking maybe your 6 or 7-year-old kid to see this movie and there's curse words left and right, you as a parent might feel a little awkward.
Not to go ahead of ourselves, but this is a movie I actually saw in the theater, first run, when it aired. I remember going to this movie in the summer of 85. I would have been 11 years old. And I remember hearing the swear words in it and going, ooh. But it didn't faze my parents at all, to be honest with you. And it really didn't faze me. It's not like I went around going, shit, after the theater. But people just need to calm down.
It probably would have fazed my parents, but my dad took me and my sister to go see it and he fell asleep. He just didn't really even know that happened. So, because I saw it in the theater too. Give us the plot, Ted.
The plot of The Goonies. Facing foreclosure of their home in the Goondocks area of Astoria, Oregon, to an expanding country club, a group of children who call themselves the Goonies gather for a final weekend together. The Goonies include Optimus lead Goonie, Mikey Walsh, his older brother Brandon, the inventive Data, the talkative Mouth, and the overweight klutz Chunk. Rummaging through the Walsh's attic, they come across a 1632 doubloon and an old treasure map purporting to lead to the treasure of legendary pirate One-Eyed Willie, believed to be located somewhere nearby. Mikey considers One-Eyed Willie to be the original Goonie. The kids evade Brandon and make their way to an abandoned restaurant on the coast that coincides with the map. Brandon soon follows alongside Andy, a cheerleader with a crush on him, and Steph, Andy's friend.
Boy.
The group quickly discovers the derelict restaurant is a hideout of the Fratelli crime family. Francis, Jake, and their mother Mama. The Goonies find a tunnel in the basement and follow it, but Chunk is captured by the Fratellis and imprisoned with their hulking, deformed younger brother Sloth. The Fratellis interrogate Chunk until he reveals where the Goonies have gone and begin pursuit. Chunk is left behind with Sloth, but befriends him. After Sloth frees them both, Chunk calls the police, and he and Sloth follow the Fratellis. The Goonies evade several deadly booby traps along the tunnels while staying ahead of the Fratellis. Finally, they reach the grotto where Willie's pirate ship, the Inferno, is anchored. The group discovers the ship is filled with treasure, and they start filling their pockets. But Mikey warns them not to take any on a set of scales in front of Willie, considering that to be their tribute to him. As they leave the ship, the Fratellis appear and strip them of their loot. They make the Goonies walk the plank until Chunk arrives with Sloth and distracts the Fratellis long enough for the Goonies to jump overboard. The Fratellis proceed to grab all the treasure they can, including those on Willie's scales. This triggers another booby trap that causes the grotto to cave in. With Sloth's help, the Goonies and the Fratellis barely escape. The two groups emerge on Astoria's beach, where they reunite with the Goonies' family and the police. The Fratellis are arrested, but Chunk prevents Sloth from also being taken. He invites Sloth to come live with him, which he accepts. As the kids describe their adventure to their parents, the Walsh's housekeeper, Rosalita, discovers that Mikey's marble bag is filled with the gems from the ship that had not been seized by the Fratellis. Mikey's father triumphantly rips up the foreclosure papers, declaring that they have enough money to negate the foreclosure. As the Goonies celebrate, they see the Inferno, having broken free of the grotto, sailing off on its own in the distance.
Thank you, Ted. So me and Eric have both already stated that we saw this movie in the theaters. What about you? When was the first time you got to see The Goonies?
Okay, this is one that I would have seen in the theater too. I don't know if I've mentioned it here on the podcast, but when I was little, my grandmother, in the summertime where I grew up, at the local theater, they would have a summer kids movie series. And she would buy the tickets for the entire summer. And so we would go to at least one movie a week throughout the summer. And The Goonies would have been one of the movies that I saw with her.
Do you feel that was during the first run, or was it probably
it would have been
later?
It would have been second run. It would have been like probably 86 or 87, maybe somewhere in that vicinity. All of the movies that I saw with her during the summer like that are special memories because, of course, she's no longer with us. It's one of the things from childhood that I really hold dear, is being able to go to the movies every week with my grandma.
So, Eric, anything to add about the first time when you've seen The Goonies?
It was a popular movie when I was a kid in 85 where I was living, and a lot of my friends saw it, and we all really enjoyed it, like the cast. It's kind of funny how you look back on it now as we're doing. It's a completely different movie, but yeah, well, that's about it.
As far as the language and everything from before, because you're probably sitting there thinking, well, his grandma took him to see the movie. What did she think? My grandma was pretty cool. Like in 88, 89, she took me to see Batman, the Tim Burton Batman.
I'm sorry.
So, oh no, I actually like the Tim Burton Batman. It's one of the few Tim Burton movies I can actually stand.
There's very few of them.
There's very few. And she probably would have had second thoughts about maybe going to see the Batman movie, but she knew that I loved Batman. The language would never have even thought about it.
For me, at the age of 13, I was going to a Christian junior high school at that time. Like, I would have been weirded out by language in a family kids movie, however we want to call this. I actually saw this movie twice, once with my dad and then once with kids of my own age, basically, at that particular time. In fact, I saw it with the kids first and begged my dad to take us again. Very high in this movie. And then, of course, a year later, it's running day and night on paid cable channels. So I probably knew this movie by heart. So if you were a Goonie, which Goonie would you have been? Eric?
In 85, I related to the Mikey character. I was a little nerdy, little scrawny kid, had the big glasses stills before I got contacts. Yeah, definitely I'm the Mike. I didn't have asthma, but I was definitely Mikey.
I would have been a cross between Mikey and Chunk. Like a perfect mix of the two of them. I had asthma. I was kind of dorky. Well, I was dorky.
You are dorky.
And
yeah,
I still am dorky.
Yeah.
There's no doubting that. I was kind of goofy and funny, kind of like Chunk. And actually, Chunk has the scene that I probably like the most out of the whole movie, which is him being interrogated by the Fratellis.
That is a funny scene. I will say that.
That's probably my favorite scene out of the whole movie.
Yes.
I think everybody can relate to Mikey. He is kind of like the glue that keeps everybody together. And I think that's how I have been all my life. These are my friends over here and these are friends over there. And I bring these friends together and kind of create this circle. And that's how I feel like Mikey is. Mikey is almost like the perfect character in a certain sense because he's worried about his parents. He's worried about the house. He's worried about his friends. And all of this that he's doing it to go after the treasure, he's not doing it because he wants to get rich. He wants to do that because he wants to save the life that he has with his family and friends. That means everything to him. They actually have a Goonies creed, I guess, that didn't keep in the movie, and probably rightfully so. He's like the all-accepting friend. He loves everybody. And that's another thing what I like about this movie is that you have a lot of representations of different type of characters that we've all pretty much seen when we were kids. You have the smart Alec and Mouth who can't shut up. You have Mikey, who is the little nerdy guy. You have his brother Josh, who's not Josh, his brother Brandon.
Brand.
His brother Brand, which is funny because in the movie, he accidentally calls him Josh when they're down before they go into the tunnel. He says his name Josh instead of Brand. So I made the same mistake. Then you have Chunk. I mean, I was a little chunky too in my grade school years, and I'm chunky now, but in my high school years, I kind of lost the weight. But I could relate with Chunk a little bit as well. And then you had the cheerleading girl, and then you had the nerdy girl, and you had the bully. So there's a lot of representation here of kids in the 80s. And I thought for the most part, I mean, I never met a kid that was a bully as much as
that Troy.
As Troy. Yeah.
Troy. His parents were his father's kind of a bully too. It's family trait.
But isn't he still a stereotypical 80s villain?
Yeah.
In the vein of James Spader from the John Hughes movies. He's that prototypical 80s villain. I don't know. I think the tropes here of the characters, the reason that they're comfortable is because they're familiar. Because if you grew up in the 80s, you knew these characters just by sight because it had been ingrained in 80s movies that you're going to have a representation of each one of these groups. It's pretty universal that way.
I think Data's a little unique in the sense that he's kind of like this inventor, which I think a lot of kids always wanted to think that they created or built something that would revolutionize the world, that they thought they were this smart kid for like combining certain things together to make something. And that's what I like about Data is his inventiveness.
He's the prototypical smart kid, just like Anthony Michael Hall, his character from Breakfast Club.
This movie is loaded not with prototypical, but stereotypes across the board.
Well, yeah, and some of them are not for the good, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Because it's 1985.
It's 85. You got to look at it with 85 glasses on.
We were talking about earlier about Richard Donner and comic books. And you're looking at the Fratellis. How comic book can you get with the evil Fratellis?
Very Scooby-Doo-ish.
The best way that I can describe this movie, it reminds me a lot of Creepshow. It starts with the comic book telling the story, and then it morphs into the actual story. This could have been a graphic novel or a comic book. I mean, it's right off the page. There's no denying that.
Well, it starts off like a comic book. It starts off with the breaking him out of jail and the police chase. That's one of the best things about this movie, though, is that chase, and you're introduced to all these different characters who have no idea, except for Chunk, this police chase is happening in the background. But you get to know a little about all of them by the time, you get to Mikey's house. It's very smart how they are able to accomplish that at the beginning of the film.
There are parts of this movie that are very smart, but when you have the quality of the people... Like Christopher Columbus is a very accomplished movie writer.
Right. He actually had already written Gremlins before this.
And of course he would go on to many other great movies. I don't know. There's parts of this, it doesn't hold up to his caliber and some of the stuff. There are parts of it that are really good. And the whole introduction of each character is one of those things. It's a good way to get you started right in. You know who you're dealing with on each level.
Right.
But here again, it's a comic book way of introducing characters.
Gremlins also has that comic book feel to it as well.
And there is a Gremlins tie-in to this movie as well.
What is that?
When Chunk calls the cops, the cop goes, "Chunk, is this like the time when you're not supposed to pour water on the animals?"
There's also another Goonies reference. Actually, in Mikey's bedroom, there's actually 2 little Mogwai figurines on his nightstand.
Mogwai.
There's a lot of product placement
and cross promotion.
Yeah.
That's not a Steven Spielberg trope at all.
Not at all.
Corey Feldman was like, how often are we going to mention Pepsi in this movie?
And how about that Purple Rain shirt and his members only jacket?
Yep. Members only. Are you the only member?
You also had Prince and the Revolution as a poster on the wall. There was a lot of things that were being sold to you into this movie. And of course, you also have Superman references.
We have to.
And then, of course, you have Loth wearing the Oakland Raiders shirt.
Well, yeah, he's got to. It's Steve Matusek.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Which he played for the Raiders, and unfortunately he died like 4 years after this film was made.
He was an awesome player.
He was an awesome player. Might have died, though, for maybe because of steroids, maybe because of cocaine, unfortunately.
It could be a little bit of both. It's
Probably a little CTE wrapped in there.
Yeah.
And it's a
Probably.
big cocktail of
Mm-hmm.
things. But because he was part of that Raiders crew that they
Lyle
were the...
Zato and
Yeah,
Right.
they
Yeah.
were the rebels, man.
Yeah.
Those guys lived on the edge. I mean, you had Atkinson and Stabler and...
the Snake.
Yeah. They lived on the knife's edge, so to speak, and Matusak was right there in amongst them. But it's cool that he ends up showing up in a kid's movie like this. It's pretty neat.
I thought the prosthetics that were put on him were really good.
Yeah, looking at the finished product. Like I've seen like documentaries where they're doing the makeup and everything, and I'm just thinking, how are they going to make it look like they do in the movie? But they get it there, and they got the one eye mechanically.
Yeah.
But you couldn't get his makeup wet because
Right.
then it'd
But
be
he ended up getting it wet, and it cost him a whole day of production.
right. And it took like 5 hours for them, I think, to just get him into the makeup. Josh Brolin, who, I didn't realize the connection till just a few years back. I mean, he did No Country for Old Men and
My favorite's W.
and Men in Black 3, which I'm a big fan of that. And then, of course,
Someone has to be.
He was Thanos
yes.
in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
So he's had a very interesting career. You look at him now, and it's hard to see the boy.
Oh, yeah. No,
it's really hard. Like Sean Astin and Corey Feldman. I mean, it's like
Sean Astin's still playing the same role. Even when he went into Stranger Things, he was still that Mikey type character.
That's a Goonies style movie, kind of.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a
movie,
lot
TV
of
series. Yeah.
Yeah, that TV series is awesome for all of the 80s references.
Jeff Cohen doesn't even look anything like his child stuff. He's slimmed down. He started working.
He's a
out.
lawyer now, isn't
He's
he?
a big attorney
for Hollywood.
Not the actors, but the production companies. And he's a big time lawyer.
But yeah, Sean Astin, he's still playing the same character. He played the same character in Rudy.
He gets the same speeches in Rudy. So.
He plays that lovable guy.
But he does good at it. And let's be perfectly honest here. I've read some reviews and listened to some people saying that they don't like Mikey. He's the most annoying character in there. But I think they give him most of the work, the hardest lines to say. And I think he does a great job of delivering those lines. I mean, for a young guy at that age, he was the actor out of all the kids.
He does really good, but I will agree, he is a bit annoying. He gets on my nerves after a while.
Yeah, no, he does. Ki-Hai Kwan, Data, kind of gets on my nerves. He's, of the group there, he's probably the most annoying to me. The reason why Data is the most annoying character to me is because if you look at kids of that age and what they're doing, there's really no kid who is going to be walking around with a giant trench coat loaded with all these gadgets and stuff that isn't going to have the crap beat out of him on a daily basis. It doesn't happen. All the other characters are realistic. You got Mikey, who's asthma, a little nerdy. You got Corey Feldman, who's kind of like the smart ass kid who just likes to, be the class clown. You got Chunk, who's a stereotypical fat kid. You got Andy, who's the cheerleader. And of course, popular girls always have ugly friends. Here you go. There's
Right.
Martha Plimpkins, Steph. All these kids are referenced here. Yeah, all right, you've got Data, who's the Asian kid. But the inventor, I mean, it's just annoying to me, all these stupid little inventions that pop out wherever he goes.
And then his dad has the camera at the end.
I know.
Is
And
that a little
obviously,
stereotypical?
yeah, because he has a camera. Nice. Well played, Ken. Well played.
Wow. But you're right. It
Yes,
is.
it is.
Stereotypical.
It is.
But you're right, Eric. In smaller doses.
And I'm not even talking
better.
about the accident where he mispronounces words and he can't say booby trap, okay?
But everybody
That's why.
mispronounces words. That's why it works.
Everyone mispronounces words. Exactly. But it's just all this stuff. It just seems it's very Scooby-Doo-ish. It is cartoonish.
Do you think they mispronounced words on purpose because of his dictation, and they didn't want to seem like it was that they were making fun of him for his...
way too much about this.
So Mikey's got a speech impediment too, right?
I mean, everybody has got a speech
anxiety
impediment. And even the mom mispronounces things.
Yeah.
It is kind of weird that everybody else is just like,
Brand's the intelligent one of the family. That's what I said. Booby trap.
One of the most annoying parts of the movie is the parents. Parents, especially even at the end. Mikey's dad is a complete dork.
And he died a couple years after the filming too.
It's horrible.
Well, he's a historian. He wears bow ties. I don't trust people that wear bow ties, but everyone knows that.
I was going to be a historian, and the historians that I knew in college, none of them looked like that or acted like that. He's a complete and utter just
nerd.
Well,
Say
don't
it.
forget, the people that you
He's
went to
just
college with in the mid 90s compared to an older guy in the mid 80s. It's going to be different. And I mean, that's the stereotype of older, nerdy dads.
But there's not one of the parents that I like.
There's one thing that really bugs me about this movie from the beginning. Okay, this town of Astoria is in the West Coast. It's a very hilly area that has very cool temperatures and a lot of fog. How are you going to make a golf course out of this town? It doesn't make sense.
Right?
It really doesn't.
Where the weather changes all the time. It rains.
Weather changes, and you're not going to make a golf course. I mean, they could have went with a different plot where they were like going to make condos or high-rise condos or luxury homes, but a golf course just seemed a little far-fetched.
All of the adults in this movie are horrible. There isn't one good adult in the entire movie.
Well, the bad guys are fun. They're hilarious.
Are they though, really?
I think they're great. I think the brothers' interaction where they basically look like they want to shoot each other and
they do want to shoot each other.
Yeah, and they throw pizza at each other, but at the same time, they bust each other out of situations like jail and come up on the log, which there was a lot of those type of jokes where you would fall on the log and hurt your privates. There was some
that's another thing.
Lowbrow humor stuff.
That annoyed me too.
But you know what? That's the kind of lowbrow humor that kids laugh at. They understand that. I remember seeing that scene, getting a big laugh out of it.
No, yeah, I'm sure. But now, watching it, it annoys me.
It is annoying because you know it's going to happen. You're like, oh, whatever. Why would you guys even try and cross a log like that with a raging river coming by you? I know. I'm overthinking this way too much.
And that's the problem with these type of movies that we review. We can easily overthink it, where some of these movies are just made to just sit back and eat popcorn and have fun. And I think this is a fun movie. And like we said a number of times, it's very Scooby-Doo-ish. And who didn't like Scooby-Doo as a kid? I love Scooby-Doo. And I think
you've answered your own question right there. Right. As a kid, absolutely.
I still love Scooby-Doo. I'll still pop in a Scooby-Doo cartoon whenever it's on. But that's the other thing about this. We talk about the kids having stereotypical roles, but each kid also brought something to the table that helped them move forward in the adventure.
Of course, that's what they're there to do.
And I think, but that makes everybody feel important.
You can't kill any of them off. They all have to bring something to the table.
You start killing kids off, and all of a sudden you've got a different movie.
Right, but I think all the things that you have are reasonable stuff. The only thing is maybe Data with all the inventions. That's a little hokey there.
It's hokey, but it helped out. What did Steph do? What did she bring to the table?
To be the ugly friend.
Besides that, yeah. Have her glasses broken and still be able to see.
That's her only
superpower,
job.
Bad hair and...
I think she tries to be the voice of reason. Like she says, I don't think you should move that rock. God put that rock there for a purpose. I think she's the level-headed person in the group.
Okay.
Whereas the older brother is the muscle.
Brandon's better than just being the muscle.
I mean, he's a smart kid.
He's actually probably one of the most interesting characters in the movie.
Well, the cheerleader plays the piano, the bone finger, so you need her.
Yeah.
And Chunk breaks everything and breaks through doors and drops stuff.
And Mouse speaks Spanish.
And he knows pipes. His dad's a plumber.
So everybody has their specific role to play. But Chunk is also a sweet kid. He befriends Sloth. They develop a friendship. He gives him the baby roof. They share a baby roof together and they work together. And then at the end of the movie, of course, he wants his family to adopt him and live with them.
I'm sorry. It's 1985, but there is no kid wearing those pants that he's wearing.
Did you notice that the whole family's wearing Hawaiian shirts?
Yes. I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt right now, actually.
And that's another part of the thing, too, as far as how the adults are just horrible. It's so stereotypical. She's the overprotective, doting mother that immediately gives him Domino's and asks him if he's hungry.
Pizza, you hug? Yes.
I mean, come on. And Data's dad with the camera and the thing. That part of the movie is the worst part of the movie.
How did all the parents even get there, even almost before most of the cops did? Did you notice that all the parents are there? How did they know where they were at? Did the cops all start calling them up and say, we think your kids have found a pirate ship and is off the beach right now? I mean...
Yeah, they're all just... I liked it when the cop rolls on and goes, hey, it's them goobers.
The main problem I had with this movie, when they had the doubloon, I'm just not sure how they are able to line up everything with the restaurant. Are you going to tell me that this restaurant is like 300-something years old? I mean, it doesn't look like it's a 300-year-old restaurant.
100 paces direct, you know.
That's the one thing that really bothered me is when he's looking, it's like, okay, I understand like what is it? It's not a mountain.
Oh, in the water? It's
Yeah.
kind of like a cliff,
Oh,
like a
the little cliff in the
Yeah,
water.
Like
I
the
know what
cliff
you're
in the
talking
water. So I can understand that all lining up. But when they got to the restaurant, I'm like, how the heck does the restaurant line up? So there had to be something there beforehand. And then the printed money, it didn't look like real counterfeit
didn't
money.
look like real. You know what drove me nuts about this? I remember seeing this. This is the one thing, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. I did not catch this until I rewatched it and watched some of the documentaries on it. Every time they're talking about that Jeep that the Fratellis are driving, they call it an ORV, an off-road vehicle.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I always thought he was saying old RV. Old RV, bullet holes. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's like a 1985 Jeep Cherokee. It's like practically brand new. Why do you keep calling it an old RV? Are you stupid? And then I would watch the documentary and they were talking about it and like, no, it's an ORV, off-road vehicle. Because SUVs weren't a thing in 85.
It wasn't a thing.
It wasn't a thing. They call them I don't think they call them off-road vehicles, but I couldn't believe that. I'm like, oh, ORV. Well, whatever. That drove me nuts that they were calling it ORV. ORV.
I will say I do love Chuck's stories. He tries to tell the truth about the police chase, but they don't believe him because they're like, that one time when, Michael Jackson came to use your bathroom. And he's like, no, he didn't, but his sister did. And then, of course, when he's being interrogated, he gives them up right away. He's like, he's like, they're down in the tunnel over by the fireplace. Just go that way. And they don't believe him and start the blender. And then he just gives everything up, like pushing his sister and pretending that he's thrown up in a movie theater.
Using his relative's toupee as a beard for Moses.
Now, the references of his sister and his uncle were real people, and he actually went to a fat camp, but he didn't get kicked out. But he said that somebody in the fat camp did actually get kicked out.
That's true.
Well, and the whole story of him throwing up the popcorn in the movie theater, that was based off of something that Steven Spielberg really did.
Because the story is, even though Christopher Columbus wrote the screenplay, the story is by Steven Spielberg, which...
Of course it is.
We talked a little bit about this at the beginning. You could see Spielberg's fingerprints all over this, not just the writing, but the style.
He is all over this movie.
I think he was the second assistant director, so he did film some shots in this movie.
Of course he did. I don't have anything against Steven Spielberg.
Apparently not.
But
are you sure?
And this is one of the things that annoyed me the most. I love the pirate ship. I think that's so cool. It's amazing. It was life-size. That is a real thing. It's tangible. Why did they have to have some sort of a booby trap where rocks collapse in on the grotto? It's such a Steven Spielberg thing. It's like, come on, you don't have any other thing to go to? I mean, essentially what we're doing here is...
at least he didn't have the octopus.
Right? We're rehashing Indiana Jones. I mean, come on.
But this is what it is. It's Indiana Jones for families, for kids. It's a step down from the adult movie.
Instead of Nazis, you have bad Italian stereotype mobsters.
Right.
Basically. And I mean...
I could have used the Nazis in this movie, though. I think that would have been interesting.
That would have been more interesting
Very
than
much,
bad Italian stereotypes.
But I think for kids, I think having those traps are exciting.
The booby traps are fine. It's the fact that the way they end up getting out is that it has to be through rocks falling. And them getting out of that little hole in the side of the grotto, it's the exact same way that Indiana Jones and Marion get out of the Well of Souls in Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Spoiler alert.
It could be almost shot for shot.
Oh, not shot for shot. First of all,
it's ridiculous.
First of all, Raiders of the Lost Ark, he goes up there and pushes something over purposely to create that hole, where this is a trap that is set off. The problem that I have with the traps is some are very cool, and then some are just downright ridiculous. There's just no way.
The whole playing of the keyboard is one of the most ridiculous things.
That's for the kids. Clearly
and actually,
for the kids.
It's actually my least favorite part of the movie. Is them sitting there by the piano and hitting those chords. It's not exciting.
But though, didn't you secretly hope that Corey Feldman would have fallen into the hole?
I wanted one of them to drop their death.
Not at that time, but maybe
now
15 to 20 years later.
Nowadays, I wanted Corey Feldman to fall. I really did. I'll be perfectly honest.
I don't want anything really bad to happen to Corey Feldman, but at the same time, I'm listening to a commentary track on the movie, and he just wouldn't shut up for...
He's a little on himself. He's
he loves Corey Feldman, and he's not shy about loving Corey Feldman.
And the thing is, he was a pretty good kid actor. He was very good in Stand By Me.
License to
that was his-
Drive, The Burbs.
He was the best in Stand By Me.
He knows how to act. It's just fame went a little too far. Interesting thing that I read was when Corey Feldman went out for the part of Mouth, the other person going out for the part as well was Corey Haim.
Corey Haim.
The two Coreys. If you talk to my wife, she'll tell you how she was in love with the two Coreys.
Corey Haim and Corey Feldman were the hot ticket item.
I'm waiting for one of you guys to say the wrong Corey died. It's bound to come up sooner or later.
Well, you said it
Ken
for us.
actually said that earlier.
Yeah.
So.
No, I did it. I will say this, though. What they did in the movie Dream a Little Dream, somebody had to die for that. So,
wow.
Dream a Little Dream is one of my top 5 most hated movies of all time. Can't stand that movie. And then they made a sequel, which is also awful, but not as awful as that atrocious thing.
So next week on the Movie Marquee,
yeah, no doubt,
Dream a Little Dream.
Oh, how could they take a nice little song like that and just change it into just a dreadful movie? So we've been talking about the movie here. What are some themes that come from this movie? Some things that we could pull out from this movie?
Friends are always friends. Goonies never say die.
I guess this is why I like Stand By Me a little bit more. Stand By Me stands as a better movie for me is because at the end, Richard Dreyfuss's character is the author. He's reminiscing about being a kid, and he goes, "You'll never have friends like you did when you were 10." And I think there's a nostalgia like that is present in Stand By Me, whereas The Goonies is kind of an unrealistic type of a thing. Everything turns out okay at the end. And maybe that's just looking at it with my eyes now. I don't know. The ending is unsatisfying to me.
But isn't all adventure movies like that? I mean, we've been talking about Indiana Jones. Doesn't Indiana Jones do a lot of the same things, especially Temple of Doom, which this is closely related to? Those movies are silly and crazy and far-fetched, but we accept them and embrace them, especially Raiders. Raiders, for a lot of people, is the pinnacle of adventure movies.
There's some substance to those movies that there isn't here. And I think it's part of it is, like I was saying before, it's the adult characters. They're so bad. You feel happy for Mikey and his brother, but you don't feel anything for his dad. I mean, you care less.
His dad's barely in it. He just
his
weighs.
His dad's an idiot.
Ways from the museum, and that's the only thing you see of him until you get to the end. He takes like 5 minutes to sign that paper. He's like going back and forth, like, should I sign? Should I not sign? What should I do? I think we're a little too hard on the parent characters because they're barely in it. The mom is the only one that's really in it, as if we're talking about parent characters.
She's
and then
annoying too.
A little bit, yeah, maybe a little bit annoying, but at the same time, what parent, at that age didn't drive their mom crazy? I mean, the mom has 5 or 6 kids in her living room making a mess and breaking her statue and break the penis off.
Another thing that annoyed me.
The one-eyed Willie off the statue.
Yeah,
that annoyed me.
That's her favorite piece.
Wouldn't be here if it wasn't.
Yeah.
It's those little things that annoy me now. I don't find it endearing.
But we would have probably said off-color remark things when we were a kid, because you were just saying how you don't think the language is bad because kids of that age swore at that time. The one thing I did like about Mouth was his speech at the fountain when he's talking about taking back the quarter and saying how this is mine. It's a very good speech. It tells me that something has happened in his life that has really bothered him. And maybe that's why he's so obnoxious, is because there's something that's going on. I don't know if we see his mom. We see his dad. We don't know if there's a divorce. And then there's also the fact that they all seem to be moving, which I'm still questioning why they all of a sudden had to. Did they all go bankrupt?
That's never fleshed out.
Right.
There are no stakes. The stakes of the movie is that Mikey and his brother are supposed to find the treasure so that they can save the parents' house and then nobody has to move. But you never feel those stakes other than the overly evil adults from the country club.
And maybe our 40-year-old selves want that now, but does our 10 or 15-year-old selves really even care about the stakes? We all care about the adventure. That's all we care about.
I didn't care about that age. You're exactly right. It was the adventure. You wanted the adventure to move forward. You didn't care. You didn't even know what foreclosure was at 11.
Right.
This is a well-paced movie. As much as we want to maybe rip some of the gags and the traps and the stereotypes and stuff, the movie moves along at a nice pace. And it's a quick movie. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's only an hour and a half. I think it's the perfect length for a family adventure movie. So they don't drag it out too far. Though I will say at the end, I kind of agree with you, Ted, about the getting out. I felt like it took away something. If they got out and they were still on the pirate ship and somehow were leaving with the pirate ship, that would have been cooler.
Okay, and here's...
Oh, we hit something here. I can't wait.
So this pirate ship that's wholly intact, we're talking about an archaeological find for the ages. It somehow gets into the water, and
Floats
they all
away.
just sit there and watch it float away.
Bye-bye.
With all of the loot on there and everything, they just watch it. They just watch it go by. Where's the Coast Guard? They can bring the ship back. They don't just have to sit there and wave bye to the ship.
Well, actually, from what I've read in other documentations, that technically, because they found the ship and they actually took some of the loot off the ship, that they are entitled to the loot of the whole ship once the Coast Guard finds it.
Mikey and his family own the ship now.
Yeah.
That's scavenger rights.
But we don't know. It's again, we said this is a family movie.
But they sit there and watch it. Just
what are they
going to
do? Jump in the water and go swim after it? I mean, they're kids.
It's not that far out.
It's pretty far out.
They're not going to swim after, but yeah, you think the police would be on the
And maybe the Coast Guard would be out there or something bringing the damn thing back.
Maybe they would. But I mean, if you look at the film, pretty much ends as soon as they see the pirate ship.
And how do a few rubies save a town?
I mean,
all it has to do is probably save one house. Because if it saves one house, then nobody else has to move, probably. We've seen those movies before.
It's a convoluted ending.
It is.
And just watching the ship, this historical artifact, just floating away, and they're just kind of like, bye.
Bye-bye.
My biggest
Sean Astin's character is like, ooh, goodbye.
Goodbye,
like,
One-Eyed Willie.
Bye, One-Eyed Willie.
But they're kids.
It's like, come on
the
now.
kids are not, they just had this adventure. They got away from the bad guys. They have some of the treasure. Maybe the kids are just, they don't really care. If I was the parents and the police, I can understand they need to be a little bit more, hey, there's money. We got to go get the money. But I think we're asking too much of the kids to be like, we need to go get the ship. I think
I'm not even saying it's the kids.
It's the parents.
What the hell are the adults doing?
But Ted, there's only 30 seconds left of the movie after that. As soon as they see the ship, maybe they do call the Coast Guard. I mean, the ending shot is basically them seeing the ship take off and them
and there's a
watching it
news
leave.
crew out there too, and the news crew is like, I can't believe
everybody's just like,
yeah.
Bye.
And then how did the news crew all of a sudden get there so fast? Everything gets there so quickly, and they just got out of the water. Who told them that they were all there?
Yeah.
And they're all dry, too.
Bone dry.
I mean, because I know Chunk said something to the police and that it disconnected, but Chunk didn't know where they were at.
He did say the restaurant, but that's not going to tell them where they're going to come out at.
The ending does forced a little
It's convoluted.
Maybe a little bit, but so is a lot of adventure movies. So are Indiana Jones movies. They're kind of the same thing. This isn't
an adventure movie. This is a kid or a young adult movie.
I think it's an adventure movie. It's a search for buried treasure.
So, if this is an adventure movie, then my rating is going to be a lot worse.
It's a kid's adventure movie. It is an adventure movie, but it's not an adventure movie for adults. Because adults are going to look at this going, there's no way these kids would make it past the Fratellis.
I would say the same thing about Indiana Jones again. As an adult, I can say there's no way that Indiana Jones is going to get past,
incompetent Nazis.
Not just incompetent Nazis, but in the beginning of the film.
According to Steven Spielberg, all Nazis are stupid.
But then it wasn't just the Nazis.
Nazis are stupid, by the way.
I'm
not sticking up for Nazis.
Well, yeah, I'm not. Even at the beginning of the film, when he steals that idol, you have all those natives that are there that are trying to kill him. He somehow gets away from all of them, too. I mean, it's easy to pick apart this movie, but a lot of adventure movies, you have to go, oh, that's just downright crazy. Name me an adventure movie that doesn't do that.
But the thing about Indiana Jones versus Goonies, Indiana Jones, made in 1981, is taking place in the late 20s, early 30s.
Late 30s.
This movie is 85. It just doesn't hold up.
You're completely missing the point of Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones, and this is not an Indiana Jones podcast yet.
Yep.
Indiana Jones was created to be part of what was like the pulp movies, like the weekend thriller movie. Like it would cut off at the end. There would be a cliffhanger at the end of the movie, and you had to come back the next Saturday. Of those type of movies, Indiana Jones follows a very simple structure: good guy, bad guy, something that they're going for. Good guy ends up with it.
That's the same formula
That's
here.
pretty much.
Good guys, bad guys, both of them going
But
after the treasure.
this is not an adventure movie. And if we're holding this up as an adventure movie, if strictly an adventure movie and kids not involved, then this movie is.
But kids have to be involved. Kids have to be involved. It's a kids' adventure movie.
We all saw this as a kid.
Yes.
So this is a kids' movie.
So what is this? A kids' comedy and that's it?
Would you call E.T. a kids' adventure movie? Staying on the Spielberg.
He's got aliens and
get E.T. home.
Yep, and they bike away and they end up flying.
Look at Temple of Doom. I mean, crazy things.
But you didn't answer the question about E.T.
I think E.T. is a sci-fi adventure movie with kids. I think this is a comedy adventure movie.
E.T. is a kids movie as well.
I think this is
Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, and The Last Crusade. Those are not kids memories. I saw them when I was a kid because my dad liked them.
So if it has kids in it, it can't be an adventure. Is there a kids movie out there that is an adventure movie?
I mean, if you're going to say that, then the Spy Kids movies are an adventure movie.
Ooh.
I mean, come on.
I mean, it shouldn't be a movie to begin with, but at the same time, then you have to basically say that the kids can never have an adventure.
They can have an adventure, but it's a kid's movie.
But it can't be classified as...
Isn't Stand By Me kind of an adventure?
No, because it's got kids in it.
Okay, sorry.
Stand By Me is a coming of age.
Yes.
Is a coming of age
That's
movie.
more of what that movie is. I agree with Ted, at least on that.
Wouldn't Goonies be kind of a coming of age, maybe?
No, because nobody comes of age and does anything. Mikey's still the annoying little kid with asthma at the end of the movie. Whereas Will Wheaton's character at the end of Stand By Me has learned life lessons.
They even say, I don't want to go into another one of your Goonie adventures. So they even say themselves it's an adventure.
Nerds.
It is an adventure, but it's still a kid's movie.
I don't see why it can't be both.
Here's the deal. Let's go back to the days of Blockbuster. You're going to look for Goonies. What section are you going to?
I don't know.
I'm going to find it on the wall with the
new release.
Movies. Yeah, new releases.
No, you're going to find it in the kids section.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I don't think you're going to see that. I mean, it's not there now. When I go into...
Well, because there's no Blockbuster.
No, but I mean, even when you go to these used resale shops and they categorize these movies, Goonies is never with the kids' movies that they have separately on the side.
You don't find it with the grown-up movies.
Yes, you do. Eric, where did you find yours at?
Well, mine was in all the Blu-rays are in one section, so
they have a separate kids Blu-ray section at the end of the.
Actually, they
But is it strictly just a cartoon section?
It's Disney's and animated stuff and anime. It's
the Goonies are not in that.
No,
you lose. Let's move on. Just kidding.
That's color, please.
I'm not saying it's a cartoon. It's not a cartoon.
No, you think it belongs with the baby movies.
I never said it was a baby movie.
You said it's a kids movie.
This isn't Babar and his great adventure.
So what is considered to you? What's a comparable movie?
Is that an adventure movie, Babar?
So what's a comparable movie to you for Goonies? That's a kids movie. What's a comparable movie?
Is Gremlins kids movie?
That's borderline.
That's borderline horror almost.
Our good friends at Wikipedia said Goonies is a 1985 American adventure comedy film.
That's interesting. I mean, I guess that's what it is.
Well, you could always believe what Wikipedia says. So.
Always. Oh, well, I added that in just a few minutes ago.
I don't know. This is one of my major problems with the movie. It wants to be too many different things, and it doesn't do anything exceptionally well.
Critics kind of disagree. I mean, it was a certified fresh movie, and it was a top 10 movie of 1985.
Yeah, but you know what? How many of these people are marking on Rotten Tomatoes, the fan portion of it? How many of them are
nostalgia?
Yeah. Because prior to watching it this past week, I probably would have given it a 4 out of 5 stars, if not 5 out of 5, because of the nostalgia factor.
And then you watched it again and went, oh.
And then I watched it again, and it's like, this is kind of a mess.
Yeah. I was the same way.
I mean, and there's parts of it that I genuinely do like. Like I said, I love the chunk being interrogated. That is the funniest part of the whole movie. And I love the pirate ship. There should have been more pirate ship. They should have found the pirate ship, and a lot more should have been done with it. To have created something that large and something that great, to have only put it in the movie for as long as they did, is kind of a crime.
And they also tried to give it away, but nobody wanted it and ended up having to dismantle it, which...
Yeah, here's the thing. Nobody would have thought when our generation became of age, that our generation, when we have disposable income, that we would be looking for things from our childhood and would have paid massive amounts of money for that thing. And there's nowhere really to store the crazy thing. If this is a Disney film, it gets put into the Disney warehouse.
The Disney
somewhere.
Vault.
Well,
Yeah.
if I was the town
But-
itself, I would have just had that pirate
Kept it.
ship docked
Oh,
Yeah.
and used it.
Oh, definitely.
And used it as like a museum. I mean, that town actually lives a little bit off the Goonies a little bit. I mean, the jail itself is a film museum now.
Yeah.
For a
Yeah.
while there, you could go visit the house that Mikey lived in.
Yeah, but the current owners, I guess, don't want anybody coming around anymore.
What had happened was at the 30th anniversary, I guess there was some people that kind of abused the privilege and beer bottles everywhere. And the lady was very nice for a number of years about having people there. But you have 50 people showing up in a day to see your house. That's one thing. But when you have thousands of people then show up to see your house, that's another.
It's a real shame that the pirate ship is no longer around. I think that's one of the big things. But ironically enough, we mentioned Disney. A lot of the rigging from the Inferno ended up on the refurbished Pirates of the Caribbean ride in California.
Nice.
But back to what we were saying, the movie, it's kind of all over the place. And a lot of that is going to be, like we were saying, it's going to be nostalgia.
I just don't know if it's all over the place. I think it follows a tight script. It doesn't sway off in any direction. I mean, you go back and forth with the Fratellis and then go back to the kids and moving closer and closer to the treasure. It might be even to the point of too much paint by numbers, where everything is, okay, this is what we got to do next, and this is what we got to do next. In fact, I think it might not be spontaneous enough if there's a problem with it. I think it's got a lot of charm. I think the kids do a really good job of acting in this movie. I love the fact that they shot on location in Oregon for a few weeks. And I like the fact that they used the house and they used the town and that jail. And it brings a little bit of an authentic feel to it that I pretty much appreciated.
How about Richard Donner's RV in the outskirts of one of the scenes?
Yeah, he comes up and drives as one of the cops.
No.
He's his RV is parked on the side of the house.
Yeah, his RV's parked on the side of the house. Yeah.
No, I'm thinking about the three-wheeler. He drives up as one of the cops on the three-wheeler on the beach.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of nods to different movies on here. And I think, like you said, with nostalgia, I mean, they were throwing a lot of Indiana Jones references. I think even Indiana Jones's hat is worn on the set. Actually, Harrison Ford actually showed up to the set along with Michael Jackson, maybe not at the same time. The Cyndi Lauper, because Cyndi Lauper had her video. You had just a number of people.
Well, Michael Jackson was friends with Corey Feldman.
Right.
Creepy.
Let's don't go into that. That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, we could spend way too much time on that.
I mean, there's a lot of Steven Spielberg tropes on the movie.
I understand what you're saying to a certain extent. Seeing this as a kid, you loved it and had this warm, fuzzy feeling for it. And you had this nostalgic feel for it. When you got to time to review this movie, though, you had to throw nostalgic off the window and had to become Mr. Movie Review. And you had to pick it apart. I think it hurts. But I see what you're saying, because there are problems with this movie. But the thing is this movie fun? I think this movie is a lot of fun. And I think the fun parts of this movie help me disguise or hide me from the mistakes that I would normally pick apart.
Yeah, I didn't have nearly as much fun this go around. There's parts of it that were just downright annoying.
When was the last time you saw it before you saw it this time?
Oh, Lord. I don't even know, Ken.
I probably have not seen the movie all the way through, probably since the 1980s.
It had to at least be 25 years.
So nostalgically, I remembered a different movie altogether.
Right.
But then when I watched it, I'm like, and then I watched it again just to make sure. And I'm like, yeah, it was a different movie watching it in different eyes, obviously.
Things change as we get older.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've said it on the podcast, but I've told both of you that when I was a kid, I loved Dumb and Dumber. Now, that movie is one of the dumbest movies I've ever even put on.
See, I still like Dumb and Dumber. It's a sequel I don't like. Dumb and Dumber, I think, it's stupid, but it was stupid when it came out.
It's annoying.
Your tastes change as you get older. My tastes, I guess, don't change as much because Goonies is something that I've been constantly watching for the last 3 decades. Maybe not as much as I did in the 80s and 90s, but I would probably say before this podcast, I probably had seen it in the last 2 years because it does come up on like TBS or TNT or those type of channels all the time. I'm maybe not watching the movie from beginning to end, but I'm watching 15, 20 minutes here, 15, 20 minutes there. The movie's still fresh in my mind. And I probably have grown into accepting the movie for what it is throughout the years because maybe I've seen it more than you guys, whereas you have this remembrance of it being something that maybe it really isn't. I tend to really still like it. I think it's an enjoyable film. Do I like it as much as I was when I was 13, 14 years old? Nope. I don't think I like it as much as I did when I was in my 20s. But it's still a good film. If I ever have grandkids, I'm going to take them to see the Goonies, or I'm going to have them come over and watch the Goonies here at the house because I think it's a fun film.
I think it's a fun film for smaller kids now.
I guess, like you said, tastes have changed.
I love this movie because it's before like cell phones and tablets, and they had to rely on their talents instead of having to rely on what Google tells them to do next.
You just sounded like the oldest man ever living.
Back in my day.
But it's true. I mean, when I was a kid, there would be kids playing
back in my
all
day
the time. And now you don't see kids playing as much as you did.
Well, it's because their parents don't let them stay out, go past their lawn because they'll get abducted.
No,
back in my day,
I think that's
we used to play stickball in the streets,
in the snow, and we liked it.
But we are in a day and age where kids are on their phones and on their tablets and their computers all the time. My daughter doesn't talk to anybody on the phone. It's all text messaging. I like this film because I love the relationships the kids have with each other.
It's an era gone by.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
And maybe that's why I'm relating to it. And you guys know how I think about friends. I really appreciate having friends. And if I could, I would have my friends hanging out with me every single day. My wife would probably go
about a TV show.
Yeah. Yeah. I would have you guys and friends of the past just hang around with me all the time. My wife might be a little annoyed by it, but I enjoy those type of things. And so when I see these kids get together,
do too.
When I see these kids get together and they're working together, and at the end, they're sitting together and looking at this pirate ship, there is this sense of unity that I appreciate.
You're making us sound like we don't like Friends.
We're evil sons of bitches, man.
Yeah.
Kid hater.
I love Friends as well.
And the TV show.
That's why we're doing this podcast. It's because we're friends and we like to spend time with each other. But, hey, some of us more than others. I don't know. There's something with the movie that it doesn't ring anymore like it did. And
you do a great job selling it, Ken. You really do, man. I give you an A+ for effort, but...
Yeah. There are movies that do it better, especially the friendship thing, that don't have to rely on stereotypes or movie tropes. Like I've said, there are things that I really do like. I haven't even mentioned one of the things that I do think is really kind of cool is Sloth. He's basically being held prisoner down in the basement, which that's shocking all in and of its own. That's a whole nother podcast. He falls in love with Douglas Fairbanks. And he thinks of himself as like Mutiny on the Bounty and those type of pirate
kind of thing.
Yeah, those type of pirate movies. And
Captain Blood.
That's what I was trying to think of. I think that's really kind of cool. And I think that shows up when he helps rescue them on the pirate ship. Stuff like that works because that's unique and that's fun.
And that's what I see in this movie. I see those
But see, it's just little pockets for me.
I don't see them as pockets. In fact, I think even though this is a 30-something-year-old film, this is a throwback film to movies, adventure movies of the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
No.
Or
I think it...
No.
I think it's a throwback film because...
To what? To what movie?
To adventure movies of that generation.
Like what? Maltese Falcon.
Maltese Falcon is not...
This is not even in the same...
It's a totally different movie.
Stratosphere.
It's a totally different movie. Maltese
Falcon. But it's
Falcon.
an adventure movie.
Is Maltese Falcon? Where do they take the adventure to? Where do they go?
They're searching for the Maltese Falcon.
I don't know if I would consider it as the same adventure.
Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
Okay, maybe I would go with that.
This movie doesn't even come close. Well, that's a whole...
There, you wanted a movie.
That's a bad movie.
So now I know why you don't like this movie. Because you don't have taste. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean... But I mean, you're talking about throwbacks to adventure movies from 30s and 40s. No. Don't even try to make that leap.
But at the same time, you couldn't give me a movie that the Goonies are related to. What are they related to? You said that's a kid's movie, but you couldn't give me a movie that is like the Goonies. And that could be good or bad, because maybe Goonies is its own thing. And that sounds like that confuses you.
What it tells me is that it doesn't do anything exceptionally well. It's a decent movie that does everything just good enough, but nothing exceptionally well that it fits into one genre.
It's a poor man's Princess Bride, is what...
Whoa! No. Let's don't even go there. This movie, compared to The Princess Bride, no.
Not putting
not.
it even. I did say poor man's, if you understand what poor man's mean. It means that
yeah, but it's
step.
not even a poor man's Princess Bride. Princess Bride is a generational movie.
A lot of people think that this is a generational movie. People actually go to this.
No way.
Who thinks that?
No way.
They have festivals for this movie. You don't have a festival for a movie that sucked. Am I right by saying that? You have a 91% audience score.
They show Rocky Horror Picture Show at every midnight showing across the country.
There's people that adore that film, and you know that to be the case.
I'm sure there's people that adore the Goonies. That doesn't make it a good movie.
To them, it does.
That's them, and I would politely disagree. It's just...
But you think every Kevin Smith movie that's been made is a great movie, so...
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
I acknowledge that there's bad in it, but it's geared towards me and my humor.
And that's where we're at.
It hits that point. Those are comedy. Comedy is subjective. This is not comedy. This is not subjective.
This is adventure comedy. It is subjective.
Comedy.
It is subjective.
I guess. I don't think anything...
You didn't laugh? You didn't think Chunk was
funny? The only
funny?
time I even chuckled, like I said, when Chunk's being interrogated. That's funny. If you're talking about intelligent parts of the movie, that's one of the only intelligent parts of the whole movie.
You just said intelligent parts of this movie, and we were talking about Kevin Smith. Anyway,
well, you're the one that brought up Kevin Smith.
Well, I'm just saying it's a different type of humor that you probably don't like as much as you like other type of humor. And I mean, Eric's a fan of Kevin Smith too, and he likes most of Kevin Smith movies except for Clerks 2, which we both think is one of the most awful movies ever made.
Oh, I don't like Jay and Bob Strike Back.
And I acknowledge that it's probably not a good movie. But do I enjoy it? Yeah, but I'm not. Am I going to sit here and say that it's timeless classic? No. You're comparing this to The Princess Bride.
I did not compare it to The Princess Bride.
You said it's a poor man's Princess Bride.
Yeah.
You brought it up in the same sentence.
Okay, Princess Bride is kind of like an A movie. Basically, when I say a poor man's Princess Bride, it means that it's not an A movie.
Then it's going to be a far shy away from Princess Bride. I completely disagree. I couldn't disagree with you anymore. And to bring up Kevin Smith is just ridiculous.
How dare you?
I was planning on editing that part out anyway.
Kevin Smith has nothing to do with the Goonies.
No, it's about taste.
I readily admit that I like some bad movies. I love the Fast and the Furious movies. I've seen every one.
It's the same movie over and over again.
I'm going to see the one that's going to come out in June. Oh. That doesn't mean that I think that they're timeless classics.
You know what you get.
It is the fast food of movies.
It's a guilty pleasure.
But we're saying, would the Fast and Furious get an A or a B from you? The answer probably is yes.
It's not going to get an A or B from me because I know it's bad, but I enjoy it.
See, and I'm
going to make sure that everybody knows how much I enjoy it.
And again, you're rating on technical basis and not on enjoyment. So that's where I guess we're different. We're different in that aspect. When I grade on basis of enjoyment of the film, with a little bit of the production value. If I thought the movie wasn't made well, it might affect the grade down a little bit.
This movie isn't made well.
But is it enjoyable?
Yes, in parts. But there are parts that are extremely annoying.
Overall, is it an enjoyable film?
Yeah, probably.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
But I'm riding on the fence. Because that's what this movie does. It rides the fence.
To me, if I enjoy it and I can watch it over and over again, I think it's a good movie. If it's a movie that's technically well made, but I can't stand watching it ever again, I'm not going to give it a high grade because I didn't enjoy it.
Nor should you.
That's the difference between, I think, our grading. Is you're more on the technical aspect where I'm more on the, how did it make me feel? We could agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree?
Yes.
Disagree to disagree.
We could agree. Yeah, we could disagree to disagree. I can't believe out of all the movies to get us riled up, it's going to be the Goonies.
It's going to be Goonies.
How about that? Couldn't have been Elf. It's Goonies. I don't understand it.
See, that's the difference between this movie and Elf. Elf knows what it is. It goes full bore, straight in, and it is that. And there's no denying that it's that.
What?
This movie rides the fence. the entire movie. It doesn't know what it wants to be. And that's the difference between this and Elf.
I'm very curious of your grade because you didn't give Elf that good of a grade either. So I'm a little curious to see where you give this. Okay, well, let's move forward because we've been going back and forth on the adventure kids, whatever case for a while now. So.
American Adventure, something or another.
Yeah, something or another. We're going to edit like about a third of this out.
Pretty much.
So,
all the Kevin Smith
all the
stuff.
Kevin Smith stuff. And
no, I think that's the key to this whole
That's the key to
podcast. So we were talking about the actors, and a lot of these actors, of course, were kids at the time. I think Josh Brolin and Cary Grant were both, 18 or 19, I think, at that particular time. Their careers basically all went into different directions. Ted asked me to ask this question, and the question that we're going to ask is, who is the most popular Goonie?
Who's the most famous?
Who is the most famous Goonie of them all?
Most famous as in name drop. Oh, I've heard of that person.
Who's the A-list star of the...
Okay, well,
that's come out of this movie.
I can answer that one for you. I would say in this movie, people of my age are probably, it's going to be, wow, it's tough. Realistically, most career that has spanned the test of time, if you will, it's going to be Joe Pantoliano, in my opinion.
Ooh, Joey Pants.
Joey Pants, followed closely by a Josh Brolin. But I think if you're name dropping, I think Corey Feldman is going to get the name that people know. They probably can't name a lot of stuff he's in. People of our generation can, but they're going to know the name Corey Feldman. I think you'll know Josh Brolin just because of his dad as well, too. Jeff Cohen, I think, is probably the most successful of all of them when it comes to careers as a multi-million-dollar attorney. Josh Brolin probably has a little bit more money too.
But Josh Brolin has that Marvel money.
And he's definitely done some good stuff recently.
Yep.
I guess it's going to be Joey Pants or Josh Brolin. I guess I'm leaning towards Brolin now that I think about it more.
You got Pantoliano. He is The Sopranos, of course. And then the Matrix movies.
He's Guido,
he was in the first Matrix movie.
And I probably wouldn't disagree with either one of you, but I would give a honorable mention to Sean Astin because I feel like from mid-'80s till now, he's been the most maybe consistent.
Playing the exact same role.
Maybe so.
9 out of 10 people couldn't tell you Sean Astin's name. I'm playing that card. But no one knows who he is.
But he's been in all types of movies.
Don't care.
I don't think people are going to know Josh Brolin's name either.
I think people do know Josh Brolin's name.
Normally, I'd agree with you there, Eric, but because of Stranger Things, I think people would know who Sean Astin's name is. That doesn't make him the most famous.
I think people would have known his name back when The Lord of the Rings came out because those actors got really highly publicized. That was a big-time trilogy movie. And people of our age group, especially Rudy.
Time snooze fest.
When we think of football movies in the 90s, we think of Rudy.
He actually made Rudy Rudiger actually likable.
Exactly.
Which is a hard thing to do.
And he comes from...
Because I know people who have met him, and he's kind of a jerk.
Shocking.
He comes from a great family tree. His mom was Patty Duke.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I didn't know that until I was doing the research for this. And his dad is famous too.
Yeah, John Astin, who played Gomez Addams in the Addams Family.
That's what I thought.
He's got good genes.
He's a good actor.
So he should have done more with his career.
He does that exact same role.
He should have done more. Besides Stranger Things, he's a write-off.
I don't think he's a write-off. He's got some really good movies.
Yeah, all right.
Well, Rudy, Memphis Belle, Toy Soldiers.
The Goonies.
The Goonies, Courage Under Fire.
Movies that no one's ever heard of. Keep going.
That's not his vehicle, though. That's Meg Ryan's
vehicle. These are not his vehicles, but he does play a lot of side roles. 51st Dates. He's also in Click.
He was, I will say he was funny in 51st Dates. I did like him there. He's all steroided up and everything.
The thing is,
he's kind of like a steroided up Rudy.
Yeah, basically. But he's been around doing things for a very, very long time and keeping his name in the game. And
jeez, what are you in his fan club?
Ken is the president.
He did get on the most popular TV show probably on Netflix, or at least over the last few years.
One of them, yes.
Yeah, he was able to get back on that show because of his acting.
Well, but Stranger Things has a major 80s throwback. That's what the whole show is one gigantic throwback.
So once again, he goes back into his role as the Goonies.
Yeah.
So
I'm not saying that he's typecast, but James Brolin, because he disappears in his roles. He's such a good actor that he's disappeared in a lot of those movies that we talked about before. And even with the Marvel movies, he's hidden behind all that
CGI. But he's awesome as Thanos.
And I'm not saying he's not. But I mean, there was a time there where after Goonies, you didn't hear the name of Josh Brolin.
He did disappear for a while, but when
Probably
he came back,
went to college, got an education.
when he came back, I mean, No Country for Old Men, he is really good in No Country for Old Men.
Great movie.
I mean, that's one of the Coen brothers' best movies.
In the last 10, 12 years, he is definitely by far the most successful actor of the whole bunch. Out of everybody, I would say, the last 12 years.
You do have a point with Sean Astin because of the dork factor of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. His name is definitely out there. I mean, the Lord of the Rings trilogy has a massive following. It's not that big of a stretch of the imagination.
You'd put him ahead of Joey Pants?
That's tough.
Yeah.
Because Joey Pants is part of probably the greatest TV show in the history of TV.
He wasn't the main character.
No, he wasn't James Gandolfini. He wasn't Tony Soprano. But his character is memorable.
But I would say he's very much like a Sean Astin in the fact that he keeps working and keeps on showing up in things. I think he's probably a better actor. If we were talking about acting chops, Joey's over Sean in a heartbeat. In fact, I love him in Eddie and the Cruisers back in the 80s. If we talk about it,
he's really awesome in Memento too.
Yeah, I mean, he's
the killer pimp, baby.
He's a great actor.
Running Scared. He's done some good stuff.
But he's one of those actors like Sean Astin that kind of takes those parts and keeps them like in the running. And then you see him in something like The Matrix.
Right.
Right now, Josh Brolin is the most successful actor of the whole bunch. But I think Joanne and Sean are kind of like right there. But I get what Eric was saying about Corey Feldman, because if you want to talk about just a name that just rolls out your tongue, Corey Feldman, just for every time you hear Celebrity Rehab, you're going to think of Corey Feldman.
The National Enquirer basically subsisted off of Corey Feldman in the 90s.
Both the Coreys in the 80s. Yeah. I mean, they were hot.
And they were high.
And high, yeah. High and hot.
Very high.
Want to see something really awful? Just watch those Lost Boys sequels.
Ooh.
Oh, Lord. You've actually seen some of those?
Yes.
I'm sorry. That's why you like the Goonies so much. Cry.
Once you watch Lost Boys, the Goonies look like Casablanca.
So. Exactly. Holy smokes. I don't think I've seen any of the sequels to the Lost Boys. I think I'm going to count my blessings on that one.
They're downright horrible.
Oh, they are.
And they're money.
I've seen one. Yeah.
They're money grabs. That's exactly what they are. Corey Feldman, is it wrong to say his story is a tragic story because
he did it to himself? I mean, everything.
He did it to himself.
Yeah. Or was it the Jesus shoes?
Right. We don't really know what Michael Jackson did to him.
Who knows?
But it might be fame. We see what fame has done to a lot of these Disney kids.
Yeah, look at Hannah Montana. Data... He might be the most annoying person in 2 movies.
Oh, definitely in Temple of Doom. Clearly in Temple of Doom.
Very annoying in Temple of Doom, and he's very annoying here, too.
I think he's fine in spurts.
He takes up too much real estate in both movies.
I don't have a problem with I like the slick shoes, but I think there's just too many gadgets.
Oh, God, that's horrible.
Right.
That's so horrible.
I think they just needed to go with one or two
everybody,
things.
Slick shoes.
Because basically he's an Inspector Gadget.
No, he's supposed to be Q from James Bond.
Well, he has the 007 on suction thing that pops out.
And when he comes in at the beginning of the movie, the James Bond theme is playing. This is something we didn't talk about that I do think is kind of funny and I do think is kind of neat. And that's because I am kind of a dork. I like the Rube Goldberg experiments. I've always thought that that's cool.
And that gate was fully functional. That was a real thing that actually worked. They didn't fake that. That actually worked the way they show it in the movie.
What got me interested in those Rube Goldberg experiments is Back to the Future. Ironically, another Steven Spielberg vehicle.
For me, it would be Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
I'm sorry.
I like me a Pee-wee Herman movie.
Mm-hmm.
So. But no, I do really like those Rube Goldberg.
You didn't think that was a little over the top just for opening a gate?
It is.
Okay.
But that's the point of a Rube Goldberg type of thing.
I guess.
If that was all though, Eric, I would say no. But because there is so much of data using those inventions, I think it takes away a little bit from the gate opening. It's just another gimmick. And I would have loved to see maybe just a couple of those things. Maybe the boxing glove coming out once, and then maybe
that's the dumbest.
It's maybe the dumbest, but it made me laugh the most as probably as a kid.
Wow. Well, as a kid, thank God you didn't say now.
The teeth, though, was completely stupid.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
And, here's the other thing. The gate at the beginning would have been better had all the booby traps not been the same. Basically, Rube Goldberg experiments, too. You're stretching the imagination again that these pirates knew what a Rube Goldberg experiment was.
And that rope lasts 400 years.
The One-Eyed Willie is supposed to be like a court jester that got ousted from the royal kingdom and became a pirate. I could see some of...
Deep dive there. Is that from the Criterion Collection?
That's from research, man.
Oh,
I do my research. So I could see some of this, but some of these things just, how many years did you spend setting all this up to the point where you killed all your men, but you had a map. So you wanted somebody to find the treasure, but you just didn't want it to be anybody that helped you set that all up. So.
Yeah, it's almost like the Curse of Oak Island.
I have been sucked into that show, so I know exactly where you're going.
I've been sucked into the legend, and it's something.
I just want someone to die on that show, too. Just throw a death at me, something. Just keep it rolling.
There's a few annoying people on there.
A few, yes.
They could have even gotten even worse. There's a lot of scenes that were written off. Like they had planned initially to have the Angel of Death coming off, like almost on roller skates, but not roller skates camp, but kind of like on a board.
Are we talking about Oak Island still?
No, we're talking about Goonies.
Think about the words that just came out of your mouth. Mercifully, that got cut out of the movie.
We're thankful that they got rid of the octopus. That basically that looked horrible. If they would have kept it in. They had a waterproof Walkman in 1985 that you could put into a octopus to make him dance away.
Mercy.
With the audio that he could hear everything, too.
Right. The one thing that would have been cool about that episode is watching Corey Feldman get slapped because she thinks that the octopus's mouth trying to feel her up or something like that. I would have loved to see him slapped.
There are so many things wrong with all of those statements. It's enough to make your head explode. The Goonies is another case here from the 80s where there is a novelization. And from what I've read about the novelization, I've not read it, but it's better. Here again, it can take more time to flesh out the characters and do some things better. Like, if it would ever get remade, what I would want to see would be like a Pirates of the Caribbean type of scenario at the beginning, like as an intro leading into the movie, where you see One-Eyed Willie, but you don't make it nearly as cheesy as what Ken was saying about.
You mean maybe 10 or 15 minutes of the 1600s of what happened and then leads into current day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that would make things a lot better because here again, One-Eyed Willie and the pirate ship, one of the coolest parts of the whole movie, you honestly don't know a whole lot about it other than Sean Astin has a thing for it. He's the original Goonie and all this baloney.
So the original Goonie was a murderer who basically killed all his men to keep all his money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and he idolizes the guy. In fact, to the point where he doesn't want everybody to take the money off of the scales because that's Willie's.
Well, now see, this is an interesting question. Does Sean Astin's character realize that there's probably a booby trap?
No.
And that's why he keeps the money
so.
on?
No, I don't think so.
Because, watching this again and having forgotten a lot of it, when that scene started, I said to myself, they better not touch anything that's on those scales that's going to trigger another booby trap.
Yeah, but he's the same guy who pulled the rope to get the hatchet thing out that dropped those boulders. So I don't think he's that smart to recognize that. What I think is, and this goes back to one of my other questions that I really didn't touch on, is there are some themes in this movie. And I think one of the themes in this movie is greed. And I think they were trying to show that Mikey is not greedy at all. He's a kind of a pure heart. And because of the fact that he's not greedy, allows them to not get killed by One-Eyed Willie. Because if you think of everybody else in the movie that's bad, it's out of greed. You have the adults that are trying to build the golf course to get rich. You had the Fratellis who are making money. There's a lot of greed here. And then you have the kids. For the most part, they're not thinking about money. They're just thinking about how they can stay together. That's one of the things.
He's the Galahad searching for the
Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail.
Yeah, I really think so.
I could see that.
Sure, I'll buy that.
All right, we're going to start our reviews now. Why don't we go ahead and start with Ted, because I know he's so anxious to tell me what he thinks of the Goonies. Go ahead, Ted.
This is a movie that I was excited to rewatch. And I think that might have clouded my vision of the movie because it didn't live up to what I had remembered. And there's some inherent disappointment there. The movie does have a lot of problems, I mean, we've discussed them at length. Keeping its fingers in so many different pots really hurts the fact that it doesn't do anything exceptionally well. That being said, is it entertaining? It is in parts, but there are parts that are really, really annoying. And I can't overlook that when I'm giving my grade. Is it the movie that I'm going to go back and watch again? Probably not for a while, which was disappointing. And I think I'm having a hard time distancing myself from the disappointment I felt rewatching it. And I'm not going to let that dictate my letter grade, but I think when I come down on this movie, I think it's a solid C. I could give it a C+, because it is an entertaining movie in parts, but there's just so many things that it could be so much more. So that's where I'm going to come down on it.
Thanks, Ted. What about you, Eric?
Damn, Ted, you pretty much stole my thunder. I mean, almost verbatim, word for word. I'm in the same atmosphere, the same boat as Ted. I saw this movie when I was 11 in the theater. I loved it. Saw it a few times after. I loved it. Haven't seen it in full probably since the late 80s. I was kind of psyched. I went out, I bought it on Blu-ray. I'm like, yeah, let's watch it all the way through. Rock on. I watched it and I was let down. I was just like, wow, this really is disappointing. And then I'm like, okay, Eric, you got to look at this from a different point of view here. Let's watch it again. Let's keep a little bit more of an open mind. And I watched it again. And I went, it's not getting any better. It really just is not what I thought it was. So I watched it a third time. And the third time I watched it, I said, let's keep an open mind again, but let's look at it more from a theatrical point of view. Don't look at it from a nostalgic point of view. Look at it as if you're just watching a movie. You know, like Ken said, is it entertaining? Is the acting good? Is the cinematography good? Like you would judge any other movie you're watching. And I did. And I watched the extras and I watched the director's interviews and the roundtables on them and everything. And I'm sorry to say, man, it did not get any better. I just don't think the movie is as good as I remember it. I don't think it's as good now. I don't think the acting is great. I think it's a fun movie for someone who's like 8 to 12 years old, might still get a kick out of it. I don't really think it holds up as well. The reason why this movie was successful is its target audience and knew what it was. Yeah, it was all over the place, but kids in that age group, they're not really looking for Casablanca or the Maltese Falcon. They're looking for a little bit of fun and adventure, and this movie has it. And I don't think the kids of today would really be able to sit down and watch this movie all the way through and really appreciate it and feel the way we did when we watched it when it came out. Because of all that, I'm with Ted. It's a solid C and not much more.
Thank you, Eric.
And one point, Eric, I wanted to make too. You had said that you had bought it on Blu-ray.
Used copy of Blu-ray, I might add.
I bought it on the 4K, and anybody out there who's listening, don't bother with the 4K. It's the exact same transfer from the Blu-ray. There's hardly any differences, and you don't get any of the special features on the 4K. It's very disappointing.
Stick with the Blu-ray, folks.
Well, I also have the Blu-ray of this movie. I watched this movie a few times, one with the commentary on, which was annoying because Corey Feldman was talking a lot. That kind of bothered me, but I enjoy this movie. I guess I still have that 8 to 12-year-old boy inside of me that enjoys.
You should let him out.
I should let him out to play. Shouldn't keep him in the basement chained up.
You like 8 to 12-year-old boys?
I knew it.
Should you be broadcasting that out to the world?
Oh, be careful. Be careful. Guess who's the one that's editing this podcast? And it's not you. But I enjoy this movie because I believe in the friendships in this movie. I believe that all these kids liked each other. I thought the acting was good. I don't think it was great. I do think that Sean Astin, there was a lot to ask of him in this movie. And I think for the most part, he pulled it off pretty good. I think the Fratellis were fun bad guys. I don't like my bad guys in a adventure comedy to be all serious. I want them to be threatening, but at the same time, I want there to be something funny about them. And I believe that there was something a little funny about them. The kids working together, seeing all the different types of personalities remind me of friends I had in grade school and high school because I saw a lot of those kids that I grew up with in these actors. Some of the things are far-fetched I think there's some things that just doesn't make sense. They're not making a sequel because they say they can't live up to the first one. But I think as long as you have strong chemistry, I think you could pull it off, because we see here the writing isn't really up to Chris Columbus's standards. He's done much better than this. And he did better than this in Gremlins, and he continues to do better in this in movies like the Harry Potter movies. But I do think this movie is directed very well. We do see a lot of Steven Spielberg in this movie. Is it a Richard Donner movie? Is it more of Steven Spielberg movie? Again, I think it goes back to what we were saying in The Spotlight. Donner is very good at incorporating a lot of different voices into his directorial style. I think he does a great job of getting other people's opinions and working together as a team. This is definitely a Richard Donner movie. As far as a grade goes, it's a solid B. It's a movie that I'm going to watch again. I'm going to enjoy it because when I come back, it's like comfort food. It reminds me of being 13, 14 years old and seeing this in the movie with my dad or with my friends, or even being at home, and just reminds me of what it was like to be a kid. This is one of the best movies for me that does that. And I appreciate that movie for being that. This is a solid B. All right, guys. Our next movie that we're going to be reviewing is Maverick, starring Mel Gibson. Before we say goodbye, Ted, where can they find us on Twitter?
We can be found on Twitter at movie_marquee with 2 E's.
And we also have a Facebook page, The Movie Marquee. We also have an email, themoviemarquee@gmail.com. Feel free to drop us a line. Feel free to join our Facebook page. We encourage you all to tell us how we're doing, good, bad, ugly. If you think we should replace Eric, any of that stuff is on the table.
That really hurts so much. I know that. It really hurts.
Wow. You just got written off.
Join us next week, as Eric won't be here.
Ted and Ken have a very special episode.
That's right.
The Movie Marquee. What happened to Eric?
It'll be that special Sesame Street episode.
Yeah.
When the owner of the shop died. Anyway.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's...
Jeez. Nothing like ending on a dark note.
Definitely would be added down. Yeah, we definitely want you to let us know how we're doing. And we want to have conversations. So please join us on Facebook and on Twitter and let us know what movies you want us to review. What's your favorite movies that you can't stand? If you agree with me or you agree with Ted and Eric on the movie Goonies, or if you agree or disagree with any of us on any prior movies that we've done before, we definitely want to hear from you. On that note, we will say goodbye. Fellas?
Yeah.
See you at the movie.
I sure hope to see you guys next week. Take care, everybody.
Tune in next time. Will Eric join us?
If I'm not here, they killed me.
Hey, leaving a note just in case something bad happened to him.
That's right.
We'll see you all next time on the Movie Marquee.